And we are live, or we should be live. Let's see if this works. Ted Berkey is here. Hey, Ted. Thanks for letting me know I'm live. I appreciate that. Thanks for joining me on the Purdue Rutgers post game. I was there in the building tonight. That's why you have a substitute teacher for today's show, for today's recap, I should say. Purdue wins at the rack 68-50. And it was sort of a non-event. There are things that, we've become spoiled as Purdue fans, and you've probably heard us say this over the years. I saw some people on Twitter saying stuff like, the lead should be greater than it is at halftime. It should be more than 9. Like, okay. And I'd like a gold-plated toilet, but we're both going to have to wait on that. Purdue never trailed in this game. I think that matters. I think that's important. Purdue pushed this out to a manageable lead for almost the entirety of the game. This one never felt truly like in doubt. And it reminds me of things I've said about Purdue teams in the past, Matt Painter Purdue teams in the past, where it feels like they can kind of just squeeze the life out of a team, right? And I think it used to be done more on the defensive side of things. I have a space heater in my office, and it's creating tons of feedback for me. So if you're hearing that, I apologize. Or if I'm knocking things over and you're hearing that, I'm just a complete klutz. Before I go any further, though, let me thank our sponsors, our friends at Home Field Apparel, and our Boiled 25 at checkout, and get 15% off anything you order there. And if you're on campus or in Indiana, anywhere near the sights and smells and sounds of AJ's, head there, Vine Street on campus, near the fire station. Go on in, AJ's, eataj's.com, burgers, beef, beer, that's AJ's. You'll have a great time. They'll treat you right. It's one of the few places I can say I've never had a bad time at AJ's. Just a great place. Friends of the show, friends of the program. So Purdue wins by 18. I think Purdue fans are in a fortunate position, right? Now we're becoming a little bit spoiled where, every game there's people saying things like, well, this could be better. Oh, this could be better. Guys, this team lost the 2-time player of the year, the undisputed best player in college basketball. And they're still a ranked team this is 3 blowouts in a row. And again, if you're a person who's going to find something to complain about, you're going to say, well, they're not beating the best of the Big Ten. And you're right. But that's what you have to do, right? You have to pummel the teams that you need to beat because there are no easy wins, even among bad teams. Purdue's proven that. Purdue's had weird games against, I had someone say to me that Penn State loss looks worse and worse every time you see Penn State play. And I can see that perspective. But Zach Edey also lost back-to-back years to Northwestern, right? Like, that kind of stuff happens. It's weird. It's a long season, right? It's only early January, and Purdue looks pretty good. They're 4-1? You'd think as a professional, I would have that up in front of me right now. But I don't. But I believe they moved to 4-1 in the conference. I think they're 12-3 overall. Let's take a look. 12-4 overall, 4-1 in the conference, a half game out behind the 4-0 Michigan State and 4-0 Michigan. One thing that I think is funny, I'm just going to say things to you as I think of them because I'm not as good at these post games flying solo as Boiler Dad is. Indiana is 4-1 in the conference. They're 13-3 overall. And what's hilarious to me is Joe Lenardi, they took him out of the closet and had him start doing his bracketologies already. And the one I looked at on Monday, I think, or Tuesday of this week, early this week, it had Indiana as one of the first 4 out, which it's just hilarious to me. Like, how the mighty have fallen. Indiana is actually having a good year. They're 13-3, 4-1 in conference. Like, they're a good team, right? They're a competitor. And they don't even get the respect of being in the field. Think about that. That's incredible. I mean, as much as we like to hate on Indiana, they obviously should be in the field at this point. That's a little preposterous. They have the same record as Purdue, Illinois, and they're a half game out also. So I think that'll shake out. They'll make the tournament this year. Good for them. They should hang another banner for that. More on that in a little bit. Nothing flies off the stat sheet for you in this game. I don't think. When you glance at it, you see Lawyer with 13 and he crossed 1,000 points for his career. Great accomplishment. Not that long after Braden Smith did. So that's interesting too, to me, that those two are just kind of in lockstep throughout their careers. Kaufman Wren had 16 points and 6 of 8 shooting. He was only 4 of 8 from the line, so he could have easily had a 20-point game. And then Braden, again, just leads this team. He had 16 and 14 assists. Played 39 minutes. That's one of the points I wanted to make is Painter's really riding his horses. He's riding Lawyer and Smith playing. Smith played 39 minutes. Lawyer played 36 minutes. I don't want to be one of these people who finds things to complain about, but I know these guys are young and they have lots of energy, but like, man, this game was not in doubt. I think you could sit Braden Smith down. 39 minutes is a lot. I get concerned about that. And maybe it's the current basketball mentality of load management that's got me thinking that, but man, I don't want this guy playing 39 minutes a night. I really don't. I'd love to give him some time to rest his legs. Also interesting on the minutes situation was Caleb First playing 32 minutes, right? He had 7 points. He was 3 of 3 from the field. He had a tidy little night. He had 7 rebounds. He had 4 fouls. Okay. Caleb looked good. He looked, he didn't score a ton of points, but I don't know, man. I liked his game. And 32 points. What an interesting career it's been for Caleb First. Like, this is a guy who was starting every game 2 years ago. Last year started 0 games. By the end of the year was barely playing. I think, what did he get, a minute or 2 in the championship game? Something like that. Like, he barely played down the stretch at all. Most of the season, and especially down the stretch. And yet here he is back to playing 32 minutes. It's crazy. Like that, you do not see that trajectory often, right? If you lose your minutes to that degree from a starter to a guy who never plays, those are the guys who transfer, right? But it's been documented that Caleb First wants to be a Boilermaker. He wants to get his degree. He wants to be a student at Purdue, not just be a player. So it's great. It's great that you can turn around if you're Matt Painter and be like, all right, after a year away, Caleb First is going to get big minutes again. It's just, man, it's so nice. It's so nice to have a program that's run like this. And I saw something, since I'm just jumping around, I'm going to share with you all. I saw, speaking of idiotic points, I saw someone say something on Twitter. I saw a little bit of steam gathered about this, that Purdue, that it was sort of a mark against, I know what it was. Somebody suggested that what's his face, Underwood at Illinois, is a better coach than Matt Painter because he brought in more talent. Like, that's literally what an argument someone made. And I was like, but Purdue doesn't need to bring in talent. They're bringing everyone back. Like, everyone came back. I mean, who left? Mason Gillis left. I guess defensive stalwart who gets 5 fouls and doesn't score any points. Why am I completely blanking on his name? He left, and Zach Edey left. So that sort of stuff happens, right? I mean, but they had to suggest that I think he could have gotten guys if he wanted to. He proved that last year with Lance, right? What else about this game? Purdue, again, controlled it the entire time. They did not shoot well most of the game. They ended up 50%, which is good. It's fine. They ended up terrible from 3. They ended up shooting, let me look at this, 4 of 24 from deep, 16%. Dreadful, right? That's the kind of thing that used to sink Purdue teams, right? Remember that? When they couldn't hit from the outside, they would lose even when they had Zach Edey, because teams learned, well, I mean, we'll deal with what Edey does to us, and we'll just, if Purdue shoots 4 of 24 in a game over the last few years, they lose, right? From deep, like in all likelihood, right? And here they won by 18, guys. Think about that. So again, if you're looking for things to be stressed about, well, console yourself with the fact that they just beat a talented team, a team that's underperforming, to be clear, but a talented team in a place that's been tough for Purdue to win, tough for anybody to win. And they did it without shooting that well, and only 8 for 16 from the line, 50% from the line and 16% from deep, and you win by almost 20. Like, man, that's a good story, right? Purdue only had 8 turnovers. Rutgers had 16. That makes a big difference, right? And there weren't a lot of free throws. The people who complain about college basketball when there's too many fouls called, Purdue was 8 of 16 on the line. Rutgers was 9 of 11. Game had pretty good flow from that perspective, right? It wasn't constantly being stopped. There weren't constant reviews. it really felt like it just kind of ran along until there were timeouts. And that's kind of, honestly, I think how you want college basketball games to feel. A couple other observations before I take a look at your comments. I talked about the shooting was not great. Cam Heidi still soars sometimes and excites everyone. That alley oop from Braden Smith, that was so great because Heidi was just gliding down the court, and Smith saw him from before he crossed half court, and just a step or two over half court, he just lofted it up there, and it was perfect. I mean, it was so fun to see that. The long range alley oops are pretty, but those long range ones where it's almost like half court, it's like a magic trick. It's like you pulled a card out and just Braden really reminds me. He's getting more cocky, and I could see, man, we've talked about, man, everyone's going to hate this guy. Yeah. I mean, he's always doing the inject into his veins thing after big shots. Lawyer has always had a little bit of that in him, but he was doing stuff to the point where DJ Carstensen was telling them to knock it off. Clearly, like after a big shot, after a big dunk from Kaufman-Renn, they were both hands up in the arena to everybody, and a timeout was called, and Carstensen was telling them to calm down. He was literally in there going, guys, all right, stop. And I'm like, dude, why do you have to be a killjoy? Like, the other thing that I thought was fun was Rutgers. Fans were so desperate for something to cheer about, and Rutgers had been down, 8 to 10 points pretty consistently, right? And in the second half, they cut it to 5 at one point, and it was 46-41. They hit a triple, right? I think they were down 10, and they hit a basket, and then they hit a triple, and place went nuts. Purdue called timeout, and then went on a 13-2 run. That's what's funny to me. Is when a team thinks they're back in it, and Purdue just boa constrictors the life out of them. I love that. That's so much fun. I talk about the cockiness, the little bit of swagger. Swagger is what I'd say. Purdue has swagger now. They feed off of Smith. Those are the things you see when you're there too in person. I know a lot of you go to the games. You see the stuff that's not shown on the broadcast, right? And you see them either maybe taunting the crowd a little, maybe not even taunting the crowd, but just doing a little like a gesture to the veins, or putting their hands up on the road arena, or just doing something that is a little bit of a cocky swagger thing. And I feel like that's fun to watch. It's fun to watch that they're having fun. They look like they're having a great time. They don't look stressed. They don't look like a team that's got a lot of pressure on them. And guys, that all comes from the success they've had. This team has been incredibly successful, won so many games, and now the monkey's off their back in terms of the tournament. They've got all the way to the title game. I know they didn't win a national title, but they went to the title game and lost to kind of a generationally good team. So they know what they can do. They know they can do it. They know they can go there. They know they've seen the path. There's nothing they haven't seen, right, at this point, when that's kind of a cool position to be in. So that does change the regular season for you. You go into a place like Rutgers that is tough to win, but you've seen so much now. You're not afraid of this stuff. It doesn't shake you. It doesn't get under your skin at all. And that's fun. That's fun. What else did I want to say about this game? Oh, I was going to tweet this. I probably should. I just wanted to share with you guys that Rutgers has banners hanging for making the tournament. So there are people like at Boiled Sports. Michael doesn't love the banners that Purdue puts up. He hates the Helms title, the 32 national championship. And I get it. But Rutgers hangs banners for making the tournament. It just says March Madness 2022. Yikes, guys. I suppose if Fran McCaffrey ever makes the Sweet 16, Iowa might hang one up for him. I would guess. I mean, that seems like a natural thing. After 30 years of coaching, to finally break through, I think he would deserve it. Yes, that was my gratuitous shot at Iowa. And the one last thing I wanted to say before I take a look at your comments was, I'm looking for my notes because you get a lot of stuff when you're in press row. The question is, should we be changing our opinion of Steve Peichel? We've all always liked him at Boiled Sports. We feel like, man, that guy's good. And you know what it is? In comparison to where Rutgers was as a program, yes, he's turned them around. He's made them respectable and a threat. He's made them someone that teams respect. Let's put it that way, right? No coach in the Big Ten doesn't respect Rutgers. Going to Rutgers, dealing with them, because Peichel usually has a team that works hard, plays really tough defense. He had one of the best recruiting classes in the country, right? I saw it was ranked as high as 2, I think, right, going into this year. And they're, 8-8 now? And I looked at his career record. He's in his 9th season at Rutgers. The note says that he has led a resurgence of Rutgers basketball. Let me just read to you his records at Rutgers: 15 and 18, 15 and 19, 14 and 17. The high water mark in this COVID year of 20 and 11. Then 16 and 12, made the second round of the tournament. Now that's crazy when you think about that. I had forgotten they made the tournament with 16, I guess 15 wins, because then they won a game. So 16 and 12, 18 and 14, and they were in the first four. Then 19 and 15 and 15 and 17, and now he's 8 and 8. So he's had what, 4 losing seasons of his 8 that he's completed, and he's made the tournament twice. You know, making the tournament with some regularity feels like it should be a minimum for being a good college basketball coach, right? And he's just, the first few years you definitely get a pass because that program was a disaster, but he was supposed to take it to the next level by now. And 120-win season in 9 years. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not here to cast judgment. They're not my team, but we were always big fans of what he was doing. Big fans as basketball guys, just saying like, wow, look what he's doing. This is a place that I made a joke on Twitter, or maybe it wasn't on Twitter, but Anish and I saw Purdue win there by 50 points, like 7 or 8 years ago. 50 points. You got beat on your home court. So they're not like that anymore. So that's where the bar was. So maybe it's not fair to judge, but I think after 9 years, it's fair to start judging, right? It's fair to start saying, are we really resurgent, or are we just a version of the spoiler makers? Because they do beat ranked teams. They just don't really do anything with that. All right. Those are my thoughts. I'm going to look over at your comments. Ted Berkey says, good evening. Zach Welch, hello and boiler up. Dowdy Dowd, whoever that is, gives me the flame emojis. Yeah, Ben Carnahan, exactly. That's what I was thinking. They got pushed. He says they got pushed when it was down to 5 in the second, but responded and pulled away. Purdue went on a 13-2 run, and let's say it was 46-41, and Purdue ended up scoring 68. So they went on a 22-9 run to finish it. That's a funny thing when you just step on their throat like that. When you say, "Oh, you thought it was close." That's cute. Zach says, can you confirm if a new officiating crew came out for the second half? No, they did not. Thoughts on Purdue's new defensive identities? Emergence of a strong defense changed the ceiling for this team. Hey, man, defense wins championships. I can just throw all the cliches at you that you want. Boiler Dad did some great. Every now and then, he's like, remember when in like Rain Man, when the guy could suddenly count cards and like was just a genius? That's how Boiler Dad is about stats and data. Usually he doesn't understand any of it. Then every now and then he'll pull out some info that's just blows your mind. A couple of years ago, he did some analysis of one of those Purdue teams. I forget which year it was, but Purdue was pretty good, but we all had our doubts about how far they could go. And he did some analysis on how teams that are not solid defensive teams don't go anywhere. No matter how good they are offensively, no matter how well coached they are, if you're not a good defensive team, you're not making any kind of a deep run. So yes, the emergence of a strong defense, changes the ceiling for sure. And hey, man, defense lives here. You know that. First has looked so good. Boiler Bugle says, what do you think has changed to bring that out of him? I don't know, man. I think he's just an upperclassman. I think he's a guy who's seen it all. He's another one, right? He's been here through the best and the worst of it, right? And he's played every role. He's been a relied upon guy. He's been a high ceiling early in his career guy who got a lot of minutes. He's a guy who started a ton of games, maybe all the games 2 years ago. He did the ELF ads, which really, increase your confidence. If you can look good in that outfit, I think it does a lot for your confidence. And then he saw last year, this is a guy who never stopped being obviously committed to this program, right? Because if he's now getting huge minutes again, as I mentioned earlier, whoops, stand by. I just, never mind that I just pulled out my mic cord. I do something to my mic almost every show and it drives Anish crazy. But anyway, I don't know what I was saying about first, but that's some of the reasons I think that's been brought out of him. Boiler Dowd is here. He says, incredible job by Paint getting things turned around when the game got interesting midway through the second half. More so, Paint had been doing Paint things clearer than the last few weeks. Yeah, I agree. This is, we talk about this every year. This is what he does, right? He tinkers around with the team, and when you get into Big Ten play, he's pretty much got it figured out almost entirely, right? And this year he doesn't have everything figured out, but he always goofs around a little bit in December. Last year he didn't have to, right? But this is what, like Boiler Dad said, Paint doing Paint things. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he can use this time for. And yeah, they lost a couple of games. They also won some pretty big games too. They have some really quality wins on their schedule, right? And a lot of opportunities for more. So first says has been a spark. Sorry, Nick Cristiano says first has been a spark. Better with him on the floor. Heidi and Colvin got to figure it out. They have no shot right now. Yeah, seeing Colvin struggle shooting is really weird, right? Because that guy used to come off the bench in 5 minutes, hit 2 threes, and you're like, man, it's like he's automatic, and he's not right now. So yeah, there's nothing more to say, but he has to figure it out. But that happens, right? That happens. Guys go through that kind of stuff. Nice win from Tim and Ethan. No way if you told me a 4 of 24 from 3 we'd win. Defense is stellar. Yeah, I agree. That's what I was saying earlier. Like you wouldn't have won. This team wouldn't have won a few years ago. Nathan Doliak says, didn't Rutgers have a top 5 or top 10 recruiting class? It depends what you look at. Bullard Dad's a big fan of recruiting and recruiting magazines. He likes to read about high school boys and how their physicality is shaping up and how they're rated. And yeah, Rutgers was, I think, some publications had them at 2. I definitely saw that. They were the number 2 recruiting class. That's how you get fired. I mean, I don't think Pikel's going anywhere, and I don't think he should because it's Rutgers. But I do think that when you have a top 2, have a top, say, even top 5 recruiting class, I mean, he's 8-8, and he's like, what is he, 1-4 in the Big Ten? Baby, that can get away from you fast. Ask Ohio State how that can get away from you, right? Man, ask Holtman. Whew, that can get away from you quick. It can unravel, especially when you've got guys that maybe aren't going to be here long, right? And in this current age of college sports, if these guys don't like it, they're just going to bail. And I kind of, why not? They've got the mobility. Tim Eaton says TKR needs to devote some serious time to practicing free throws. May cost us a game or 2. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. Free throws are a thing that drive coaches nuts, but at the same time, what are you going to do about it? Ted Berkey, you must have been the one who says Purdue should have been up by more because you saw me call you out. He says it's due to the fear of the other team coming back due to Purdue history. We're getting rid of that with these teams, but PTSD is still there. I'm with you, Ted. I'm the one who's made this joke many times. I've said to you guys on Twitter, it's probably been a couple of years since I said this, but I used to say, well, how much would Purdue need to be up by at halftime for you to be like totally relaxed, like on a substance level relaxed? And people used to say like 50, right? Because if they were up 25 or 30, you'd be nervous with 20 minutes to go. You would. If you're up 20 with 10 minutes to go as a Purdue fan, I just said that. And I know in your chest now, you're like, yeah, I'd be nervous. They were up 16 tonight with 4 minutes to go. And I didn't want to tweet anything like game over. And it was clearly over, but I'm with you. I got the same PTSD. Zach Welch says, watching Purdue refuse to allow the press to break them is such a great evolution of Purdue basketball. I'll give Boiler Dad some credit here. He made a great point. He does make this later in the comments here that PJ wasn't great against the press as a player, but he's crazy good coaching. And that happens. That is something that happens, right? Some of the greatest coaches in basketball history were not great players, right? In all sports, not even just great baseball managers were mediocre or not good at all players or 200 hitters, but they somehow are good managers. Same thing happens in all sports, right? Guys just have a mind for. Matt Painter wasn't an NBA player. He was a good college player, but he wasn't a superstar, and he's a great coach. Boiler Dad makes a point here. Apparently, he'd like to be on here with me. Compare and contrast how we felt last year as fans with better record, much higher ranking, house money, and the process is fun. Yeah, this year feels like a freebie, right? Now, if they flopped and they were doing what Rutgers is doing right now, you'd be pissed. You'd be annoyed because you'd be like, you're wasting a year of these guys that we've got. But with the monkey off their back, that's what I was saying earlier. Everything feels lighter. Everything feels like everyone reacts to losses much better. Like, okay, move on, whatever. We now know the only losses that matter are in March. So who cares? Like, just keep winning, get a high seed. They're a half game out of the Big Ten, right? Big Ten title is still in reach and should be a goal. So yeah, it is different. The vibe is different. Ted Berkey says Rutgers fans want him gone now. Yeah, there were some Rutgers fans that were not happy with Steve Pikiell during this game. There was a little bit of a palpable. Jersey people, I don't know if you know this, they can be a little abrasive. And yeah, they're starting to lose their patience with him, no doubt. But that's every fan base, right? If you've got promises of riches, if you've got promises of, oh, this is a great class, we're going to be so good. It happens in every fan base, right? When you build them up like that, right? If you said, oh, he's got a crappy recruiting class and there were 500, there will be people saying, well, maybe next year get better recruits in here. But when you tease everybody with great recruits, man. Boiler Dad says Jaquil Taylor game, right? Yeah, that was the name he couldn't remember during the halftime show. The 50-point game, Jaquil wasn't the reason, but that was, I think, his best game as a Purdue player. I forget what he had. He might have had 20, like a quiet 20 out of the 105 or something that Purdue scored. Yeah, Taylor he was a good dude. He just never really found his own at Purdue. Zach Welch says, has Steve, meaning Peichel, fallen victim to the early Purdue? The painter chased the rankings, but not putting together a cohesive team. That signature defense and fight seems to be gone. His best teams weren't highly rated recruiting. Exactly right, Zach. I think that is exactly what it is. And I thought the same thing watching the game. I remember when Painter went through that, right? He recruited guys that were not guys he ever would have recruited and never has since. And we've talked about this at Boiled Sports, that he clearly decided, you know what? I'm doing it my way from here on out. Get fired, don't get fired. I'm doing things my way. I'm never going to promise guys playing time. I'm never going to recruit guys that are jerks and bad for the program. Just not going to do it. And I'm not saying any of these guys at Rutgers are jerks at all. I'm just saying I think there's something to what you're saying, Zach, that Peichel maybe, instead of putting together a hard scrabble team that knows they're outmatched and outgunned and outranked, now he's got guys who maybe are a little higher and think we should be better than this. We should. Why are teams not, bending to us? Well, you're not playing like a team. And it can't just always be right away. Like, I mean, sometimes it takes a season for that kind of thing to happen. You just don't get that kind of time in college, right? Dad loves Wapner, he said. Let me see what else we got here. Nick Cristiano says, if I get to his comment and I have the schedule at my disposal, I do now, Nick, I brought it up. Take a look at that February and on, and let us know how many wins you think we can get out of that stretch. So mid-February, let's take a look at mid-February. Let's just humor Nick here. Mid-February. So let's just go from here on out. So they have Nebraska coming up on Sunday, and then they go to Washington, go to Oregon. Those will be tough, but I don't think Oregon's anywhere near as good as everybody thought they were. That'll be tough on the road, no doubt. But then they come home, have Ohio State, have Michigan, have Indiana. Those are 3 tough ones in a row. Then they go to Iowa. I'm only up to February 4th. Then they have USC on February 7th. Let's get them. Okay, here we go. Here's the I'm assuming mid-February stretch that you're referring to. February 11th, they play at Michigan. February 15th, they host Wisconsin. February 18th, they go to Michigan State. February 23rd, they go to Indiana. And February 28th, they host UCLA. Yeah, that's a tough stretch. If you at Michigan versus Wisconsin, at Michigan State, at Indiana, if you go 2-2 in that stretch, right? I think that's, again, just looking at it from a purely, kind of taking emotion out of it, right? If you go 2-2 in there, you're not unhappy, right? And if you've only lost another game or 2, say you've lost 2 more, you're at 3 losses, and you lose 2 there, you're at 5 losses. Then you finish with Rutgers. I had UCLA in there, right? So that's 5 games. So I was saying 2-2 out of Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Indiana, which I think is reasonable to shoot for. Win one of the roadies and beat Wisconsin at home. I think that's fair to say that could happen. And then you have to host UCLA, who I still think you can beat. They're 22nd ranked right now. That's at home. So let's say so now you're at 5 losses based on what I said. They lose 2 more between now and then, and you lose 2 of those. You're at 5 for the season. And then all you have after that is Rutgers and Illinois. I mean, you could lose one of those too, and you get 6 losses. So what would that be? 14-6? That might win the Big Ten, guys. I mean, I know there's teams off to hot starts. 5 or 6 losses in the Big Ten? In this Big Ten? I don't know. How do I think they'll do? I think that will test them, yes. But also, don't Purdue teams get stronger? Basketball teams, typically? And isn't February usually Painter's time? I don't know, man. That's usually when they're not losing at all. So Ben Carnahan, congrats to my Rangers because they beat the Devils. Yes, thank you, Ben. I was watching that. That's what took me a while to get on. Boiler Dad says that all the Jersey people that he knows are patient and friendly and beautiful. I think that's a safe description of everything here in the East. Nathan says Purdue doesn't need saucy players. I see what you did there, Nathan. I see. We're at just about half an hour. I appreciate you all joining me. What else do I need to share? Oh, I'll share a fun story. So I was sitting in press row, just 2 rows up behind Bill Raftery, which God bless him. The dude's like 80. I mean, I think he's over 80, and he's still going to Piscataway, New Jersey on a Tuesday or whatever night it was. Thursday, right? I don't know. It all blends together. He had Alex Faust calling the game with him. I don't know if you know Alex Faust. Alex Faust is a young broadcaster, really good at his job. He does hockey. He's one of those guys, right? He's like Adam Amin, where he can do anything and young and talented. And we need more of those and fewer of the guys who've just hung on too long. Just putting that out there. But I was also right next to, across the aisle from Rob Blackman and Bobby Buckets Riddell. So that was cool. But what was interesting is I got there, and credit to Rutgers media for, I was late in applying for my credential, and they were like, no problem, you're in. Here you go. Here's everything you need. Here's a parking pass. And I was like, wow, that's really nice. And I go in, and I get to the table, and they're like, oh, yeah, we don't have you written down. We don't have anything here for you. And I was like, well, I have the email. And they're like, no, I believe you. So she just writes me up a pass, just writes my name on it. I was like, that looks official. And then she goes, just go up. That's the Purdue media section. And it was where Blackman and Riddell are. And there's no room there. It's packed with radio guys and their sound guys and all that. And I'm like, I'm not going in there. Those are the actual pros. I'm not going to go sit there. There's no space. She's like, well, just go up in that area and I'll be back in a minute. I'll figure it out. Never saw her again. She did that thing where she's like, yeah, I'll meet you back there. It's something I do to people when they say, hey, do you want to go out and get a drink? And I'm like, yeah, I'll meet you there. Never saw her again. So I just sat where I could find a seat and did not bother the pros. But I sat next to, I believe he's the vice president of Big Ten basketball. I think that was what it was. And he was watching games on an iPad, watching this game. It was Brad Taylor, yes, vice president men's basketball for the Big Ten. And he had another screen up watching the football game because Penn State and Big Ten, this guy's got to be all Big Ten all the time. So that's what I was around. Boiler Dad says Raft Spry at 81 years old. Daniel Nelson says, seems to me the painter has flipped the team's identity and the players have bought in. Defense lives here, identity in full swing. I don't know, guys, that's flipping the team's identity. Purdue's always been known for defense. That's why it says defense lives here in Mackey. I don't know do we have a narrative going now where Purdue doesn't play defense? Because Purdue got where they got last year by also playing very good defense. That's why I have a picture over that shoulder, right there, of Zach Edey swatting Connect to seal the Final Four. So defense lives here, and I don't think that's a change of identity. I guess that's it. I guess that's all I've got for you. Who knows? Nobody ever knows how to wrap these things up. But it's been 32 minutes. I appreciate you joining me. I appreciate everyone. Thanks for letting me substitute in tonight in place of the handsome Boiler Dad. I did my best. And then thanks again also to Home Field Apparel. Enter Boil25 at checkout. Get 15% off. And also our friends at AJ's. Enter Boiled25 at checkout and get a free hamburger. No, I just made that up. You don't get that. But if you go in and you tell him you love Boiled Sports and you're there because we sent you, Adam he'll make your food with extra special care. You'll get the BS special. In fact, Boiler Dad, if you're still listening, I think what we should do is we should ask, how if you go to In-N-Out and you ask for the, animal style, you get, it's not on the menu, but if you know to ask for it, you get it. I think maybe we should ask Adam to put a Boiled Sports thing in where people ask for it. They get like, my favorite or your favorite or something. I think that's what we should do and see how many people actually do it. No one will. I'm just going to spoil it for everybody. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Purdue's next game is this weekend against Nebraska.